Welcome to the summary of South Africa, The Great Trek Reloaded. This book argues that the nation's future depends on a radical shift in how it views its assets and governance. It is a manifesto for reclaiming agency across all sectors of the economy. The core idea is moving away from historical patterns of extraction and dependency. We must understand this new framework to grasp the proposed renaissance.
That sounds incredibly ambitious. I'm completely new to this concept. When you say reclaiming agency, what exactly is the book proposing we stop doing, and what is the fundamental new approach it champions?
The book rejects the old logic where resources were simply extracted raw, and policy was reactive paperwork. The new approach is centered on institutionalization and choreography. Institutionalization means embedding resources into systems that generate continuous sovereign value. Choreography implies designing these systems to work together seamlessly, like a complex dance.
So, if the old way was just digging things up and sending them away, the new way is building complex, interconnected systems around those resources. Does this apply to everything, like debt and even education, or just the minerals?
It applies to everything, which is why the book details the 12-pillar framework. This framework treats every strategic resource, platinum, manganese, gold, not as a commodity, but as a sovereign instrument. This shift in modeling is crucial for generating capital strength. It's about transforming raw materials into diplomatic and industrial leverage points.
That's a huge conceptual leap. If platinum is an instrument, what does that mean practically for the government? Are we talking about creating new financial tools based on these resources, rather than just selling them?
Exactly. The second major theme is the ledger trek, moving from land seizure to resource sovereignty. The ledger, not the land deed, is where power hides today. This involves creating sovereign ledgers to track royalties, dividends, and performance in real time. This replaces opaque, colonial accounting with transparent, executable trust.
A sovereign ledger sounds like a massive, centralized database. How does this ledger connect to the physical movement of goods or the actual economy? Is this purely digital, or does it link back to the physical corridors mentioned earlier?
The digital and physical are inseparable in this model. Corridors, roads, rail, ports, energy grids are the structural spines of this new sovereignty. They are not just infrastructure for transit, they are negotiation platforms. They must be designed to facilitate beneficiation, credential absorption, and treaty rehearsal.
When you mention treaty rehearsal in relation to a physical corridor, that sounds very abstract. Does that mean every time a truck drives down a road, it's part of practicing a diplomatic agreement?
In essence, yes, the entire system is built on rehearsal rather than reaction. For example, infrastructure must be linked to simulation labs where potential shocks, like supply chain disruptions or geopolitical sanctions, are tested before they happen. This proactive testing builds resilience into the physical deployment.
That makes sense for risk management, but what about the people involved? If we are building all these systems, corridors, ledgers, simulations, who are the people doing the work and how are their skills recognized?
That brings us to the human element. Trade schools become credential mints. Graduates receive sovereign credentials, which are deployment licenses, not mere certificates. These credentials are linked directly to corridor needs, allowing for immediate absorption into SME pipelines and treaty work.
So, instead of just getting a degree and hopping for a job, the credential itself is a license to participate in a specific sovereign deployment, like working on the hydrogen corridor. Are guilds also involved in this credentialing process?
Guilds are institutionalized as sovereign licensing bodies, verifying lineage and expertise. They become critical actors in procurement, ensuring that local artisans and SMEs are prioritized based on verified capacity, not political connections. This shifts procurement from lowest price bidding to credentialed co-ownership.
That sounds like a massive overhaul of how government contracts are awarded. It seems the entire system relies on technology, dashboards, AI, and data sovereignty to enforce all these new rules, correct?
Absolutely, technology is the sovereign eye, the signal tower. Dashboards are not passive monitors. They are sovereign choreographers that visualize performance across all 12 pillars in real time. This includes tracking deployment, treaty rehearsal, and reinvestment triggers automatically.
If these dashboards are so central, how does the book ensure they aren't just manipulated or controlled by foreign software vendors, which seems like a huge risk?
Data sovereignty is paramount. The software and hardware must be built locally, often using adapted open-source frameworks. Verification is anchored in sovereign audit logic engines, ensuring that data is time-stamped, ledgered, and stored in South African data centers, not foreign servers.
That addresses the technology risk. But the book also talks about debt, housing, and mobility as killers that stall sovereignty. How does this grand institutional framework deal with immediate crises like massive national debt?
Debt is treated as terrain to be recalibrated, not a moral failure. The debt recalibration engine links debt forgiveness and restructuring directly to performance metrics, like corridor deployment targets. Sovereign funds absorb liabilities, turning debt into reinvestment triggers for infrastructure and social programs.
So, instead of austerity measures imposed by lenders, the debt is managed by linking repayment schedules to tangible progress in building these sovereign corridors and deploying credentials. That ties fiscal discipline to actual economic activity.
Precisely, the final section, Holding the Grounds, confirms that this entire architecture, the dashboards, the credentials, the simulation labs, is designed to absorb and manage risk proactively. It's about rehearsing sovereignty across all domains, from energy grids to maritime shipping.
It sounds like the entire book is arguing that South Africa needs to stop imitating global development models and instead build its own unique, integrated system based on its specific resources and history. Is that the final takeaway?
That is the final verdict. The Great Trek Reloaded judges industrial policy itself as the final resource to be institutionalized. Sovereignty is not declared. It is institutionalized, deployed, absorbed, and rehearsed. The Renaissance is complete when this choreography becomes the nation's living heartbeat.
Thank you. That gives me a much clearer picture of this ambitious vision for sovereign choreography and deployment. It's certainly a lot to process.